World of Warcraft's former lead designer joins Riot. Yulgang 2's first English open beta begins. Loadout locks onto an official release date. Recon Online heads to Steam Early Access, and Dragon's Prophet finally introduces mounted combat. These stories and more on this week's episode of Free-to-Play Weekly. In their seemingly ever-continuing bid to snatch up lead designers from some of the world's most popular MMOs, Riot Games is now called home to Greg Street, better known on the internet as Ghostcrawler. Street is most famously known as Blizzard's former lead game designer for World of Warcraft, which he had worked on for almost 6 years before leaving in November. Street's employment with Riot seems to have been confirmed by his own LinkedIn profile, which lists Street as lead game designer at Riot Games. This was later confirmed by Morello, Riot Games' current lead designer, on the official League of Legends forums, where he stated Street would not be replacing him, but actually providing some much-needed help on the leadership side. Street has yet to confirm anything directly through his Twitter or other outlets. Ubisoft recently announced its intentions to bring the studio's third-person shooter Ghost Recon Online to Steam Early Access program. The choice for Ubisoft to debut GRO on Steam through Early Access may seem strange to some, given the fact that the game has been in open beta under Ubisoft's Uplay platform for well over a year, and is arguably feature-complete. However, Ubisoft says it will be using this time to make further refinements before the game is finally released sometime this spring. One thing is clear though, Ubisoft sees Steam as a valuable platform for expanding its community past the relatively limiting confines of Uplay. For now, GRO on Steam remains limited to Canada, where it has already debuted. Ubisoft has yet to announce when the GRO official release date will be, or whether the studio plans to offer exclusive item packs or other items for sale through the program as a way to gain early access. Mounted combat has finally made its way into Dragon's Prophet. The MMORPG's EU publisher Infernum recently introduced the new mounted combat update, bringing 3 new ways to fight alongside your dragon of choice. The new system now allows for players to choose their dragons based on the more traditional MMO roles such as tanks, healers, and DPS. Depending on the dragon type, mounting a particular dragon will give players access to brand new abilities specific to one of those roles. Players who ride Paragon or Stalwart dragons, for example, gain access to a taunt, while enjoying improved survivability and other new abilities which boost their party members' damage. Unfortunately, a major downside does exist for the new mounted combat. Players currently cannot remount their dragon in a fight once dismounted, meaning players may only use their mounted abilities in combat once, although Infernum did mention this may change later on. Mounted combat is available in all open areas, but is currently limited to PvE, and doesn't appear to include aerial combat, at least for now. The patch also added a new high-level dungeon called Shrine of Raiderz, which contains 5 boss fights, including a mysterious skeletal dragon as the final boss. No word yet on when SOE will presumably implement the patch on the North American servers. Gaijin Entertainment has begun the arduous task of adding new tanks to the War Thunder Ground Forces closed beta. Initially, the beta only housed a single handful of tanks from the expansion's early Russian and German tiers, but with the new update, USSR and Germany are still the only 2 factions currently available, but have had their tank trees bolstered by an additional 9 tanks together. The Soviets gained access to 5 new tanks while the Germans received 4. Both factions introduced their first heavy tanks, with the Soviet receiving the IS-1 and KV-2 1939, while the Germans were given the infamous Tiger tank. Players lucky enough to be in the closed beta for ground forces can try out the new tanks on the brand new map Cuban. For the rest, might I suggest reading Gaijin's recently updated FAQ, which details some of the stuff you most likely will and won't see in the final release of ground forces. According to the FAQ, Gaijin will release 1 more closed beta key wave sometime in February. Interested viewers can find a link to the detailed FAQ in the description box below. Not every English translation of a game lands in the Western world first. Back in October, the Korean publisher M-Game announced it had struck a deal with SEA publisher Cubizone to publish the very first English translation of the non-target action MMORPG Yulgang 2 in SEA regions. Cubizone initially intended to release the MMORPG last year, but elected to delay the closed beta till late in December, pushing the open beta release to last week. Although based in Southeast Asia, the English release of Yulgang 2 is in fact a global one. Players can access the service from practically anywhere around the globe without fear of an IP block. Although the current English localization leaves much to be desired, the original Yulgang actually had an official release in the West, but under the name Scions of Fate. Both are based on a popular Korean manga called Ruler of the Land. For those interested in how Yulgang 2 plays in the West, be sure to check out our official first look right here on MMOBomb. Loadout, the third-person shooter with nearly infinite weapon possibilities, has finally lowered its crosshairs dead center on a date for official release. The guys and gals at Edge of Reality have decided to pull the trigger on January 31st, allowing everyone to join in on the creative carnage. For those who need a refresher on Loadout, the shooter is best known as that game with all the interchangeable gun parts. Depending on what goes in, guns can be as simple as a remote-controlled rocket launcher with an oversized payload, or as complex as a long-range Tesla beam of electrifying death. Loadout's been available to play for over a year now in closed beta, having appeared on Steam's early access page early last year. And the game of the week is AirMech. AirMech is a fast-paced action RTS battle of machine and man that puts a transformable robot squad commander in the spotlight of this future world gone to war. AirMech is certain to remind you of your favorite RTS games from the past while upping the ante with heavily customizable content not typically seen in the genre. Some of which include pilot selection, carryable items which grant certain passive benefits, various build options with manipulatable loadouts, and the signature option of ruling the battlefield as both a sky-conquering warship and ground-dominating mech warrior. In this all-out battle to the end, AirMech implements the traditional method of RTS victory while challenging the players to fly and move precious units to strategic locations, keep up with passive upgrades, and push forward onto the enemy territory before finally laying siege to their main base. As territory is acquired, more locations to heal and spawn become available, giving the advantage to the conqueror. AirMech features classic PvP with up to 3 vs 3 gameplay, but also hosts several other game modes including the special cooperative PvE mode, survival, and the PvP-oriented Capture the Core. So if you've got what it takes to be commander, mech, and militia, be sure to check out AirMech's non-stop war of the machines and take both the land and the skies as your own. And that's going to be all on this week's episode of Free to Play Weekly. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment in the comment section below. And be sure to head over to MMOBomb.com for more free to play action. Until next time, Natsumii out.